I'm Dr. Anthony Harper here, blessed to be at the International Religious Freedom Conference with Judge Ken Starr. And it's great to meet with you. I've been wanting to meet with you for quite some time, so thank you for meeting with me. I know you have a very important book about religious liberties in crisis. The full title of the book is?
Religious Liberty in Crisis, Exercising Your Faith in a Time of Uncertainty. That's a mouthful, but that's the subtitle. Mm-hmm. And the idea of the book, Dr. Harper, came to me, even though I've been, shall I say, working in these vineyards for literally 40 years. I just marked that because I know when I started working on religious liberty issues, and it was 1981 in the Reagan administration. And what brought home to me the need to write the book now for such a time as this was the COVID crisis that affected the church. It affected all of us. Obviously, the pandemic was the pandemic. We were all hoping and praying for relief in some form. We're thankful for. I am certainly for the work that was done in the scientific community. But that's what brought to mind the fact that we're now in crisis. If governors, mayors can shut down churches but keep casinos going, I said, we have a serious problem in the United States with our constitutional order. So the book is designed to make accessible what I call the 6 great principles. It's not a good sermon. There are 6, not 3. 6 great principles of religious liberty. And among those, in fact, I enumerated at the very beginning, is the autonomy of religious institutions, the ability to go their own way. And the Supreme Court has supported that. Another example is freedom of conscience, which is under assault everywhere. And to help people understand the principle, not just to utter the words, but to understand the principle in a way that you can talk to your children about. In fact, I want children to be reading this book, especially homeschoolers, Christian schools and so forth, so that they can be equipped in the marketplace of ideas in the secular culture to really be persuasive and winsome. They may not be persuasive, but they will have very strong arguments. And here's the nice point. I understand, you might say to that hypothetical questioner, I understand your perspective, but let me share with you a perspective that won 9 votes in the Supreme Court of the United States. So what I'm about to share with you is a perspective that's in the heartland of American constitutional law. You might put that in more simple language, but that's what I wanted, a book 170 pages long that people can say. In fact, I have neighbors in Waco, Texas, who are reading the book to their children at night, not as nighttime bedtime reading, but around the supper table. Well, let's focus now on this principle of freedom of conscience, since there's so much pressure on our young people, on all of us.
Oh, there really indeed is, but it is a serious assault on religious liberty in several areas. We talked about the Supreme Court and what they've been involved with these religious liberty issues. I know that's a big concern for a lot of evangelical Christians and many others. I'm thinking about how they impact on the businesses as well. You know, the Christian florist, the Christian cake baker, and the religious their conscience. But in addition to that, I was going to bring up the other concern about how there's been kind of a tendency to see some type of a compromise that is happening in the churches regarding the issue of the state and the church, a relationship, and how church leaders have been influenced by these state counseling license boards to believe, to get them to believe that state licensing, secular, from that perspective, is the preferred way to go. And churches may be having fear about, just having church-ordained counselors versus state counselors. And we know people have heard about counselors that have been in trouble losing their licenses because of counseling families in biblical sexuality. So what would your concerns be about the church and this kind of invasion of in this compromise?
Well, the Leviathan is going to intrude. There's no question, especially given the secularization of our culture and the aggressive secularization of our culture. And so we draw from the Apostle Paul, stand firm. We stand with Joshua, be people of courage. Be like the 2 spies who went into the promised land, but there were 10 folks who weren't so sure, right? So let's translate that into our modern day life. The 12 churches, hypothetically, 2 might be standing firm and 10 might say, I think we need to compromise with the government. Obviously, this is a matter of prayer and introspection, of collaborating. What is it that we can do to be good citizens, but yet to stand firm? And so one of the things that I try to do in this book is to give a way of thinking and analyzing the problem. So what are the biblical principles for which we stand? We cannot compromise on those. And so now what are the arguments that we can maintain, if need be, in court? And that's the good news. If you can't persuade the city council or the city licensing or the state licensing board, there is refuge and there is balm in Gilead, and it's called ultimately the Supreme Court of the United States, which just 2 weeks ago handed down a decision 9-0 in favor of Catholic Social Services of Philadelphia that lost its license. Lost its license because it was unwilling to, consistent with Catholic teaching, to place these precious foster children in non-traditional homes, including the homes of LGBTQ families. They would say, we will take all children, so there is no discrimination, we take all children regardless, but we cannot, consistent with our understanding of what we're called upon as faithful Catholics to do, place them in a same-sex marriage home. And the city of Philadelphia said, well, then we're going to yank your license. The Supreme Court of the United States, 9-0, ruled in favor of Catholic Social Services 2 weeks ago.
That was good news, and it's an implication for other Christian agencies regarding this, not only adoption, but some other issues I can think as well. And
they should be aware that there are so many friends of freedom advocates, and I hope everyone knows about Alliance Defending Freedom and First Liberty. I'm on the board of the Christian Legal Society, our wonderful Religious Freedom Center. There's so many resources, including for churches. You don't have to pay legal fees to these groups because they're donor supported. And I would say that the Board of Deacons, the Board of Elders, or a lawyer in the congregation should determine to make it a project now in this calendar year, 2021. We're going to inform ourselves about these great principles of religious liberty, and we're going to develop friendships with these important groups out there who are ready, like Paul Revere, to get on the horse, start riding, warning, but also to go into court and vindicate these rights.
I guess the last would be the Equality Act. What are your concerns about the Equality Act, the impact on our religious liberties?
It has such a beguiling term, doesn't it? Who can possibly oppose equality? But it essentially would eradicate freedom of conscience, which we were talking about. You mentioned the baker, Jack Phillips, or Bernal, the wonderful florist from Orleans Florist in Washington State. The Equality Act would say, I'm sorry, you have a religious objection, you will lose your license if that's what the state wants, or you'll suffer terrible fines, penalties, and so forth. By its terms, the Equality Act, as it passed the United States House of Representatives, would essentially wipe, for purposes of so-called public accommodation laws, they would eradicate, the law would eradicate the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, which by its very terms tells us religious freedom was under assault, we're going to restore it. That was congressional action, signed into law, honor to whom honor is due, by President Clinton, enthusiastically. But the culture has shifted, and the politics have shifted, so that now equality and non-discrimination are the great good. They're the summum bonum. That's what this society is all about. Well, our society should also, as it's always been, be about freedom of conscience.
Well, so many serious issues related to religious liberty, which has been brought up at this International Religious Freedom Conference as a core of what makes America great. I automatically think of Alex de Tocqueville, Democracy in America, And what's so great about America is the church and their voluntary efforts and all the good that churches have been and providing housing, food, a lot of help for people. But God willing, our religious liberties will remain intact and even get some back that we lost through some of the Supreme Court previous court decisions. So,
but we're on the comeback trail, and we really have been for these 40 years. Occasionally, there's a loss in the Supreme Court. My heart goes out to Barronelle, in particular of Orleans Flowers, because the Supreme Court saw fit not to take her case. But when the court takes the case, as they did in Jack Phillips, the masterpiece cake shop hero, who now has a new book out, by the way, and it's a very moving, that here I stand. He simply had to respond to his sense of conscience. Here's a very important aspect. Jack Phillips will serve everyone lovingly. He will take care of you. He will design a cake for you to celebrate anything and everything except something that he views as anti-biblical. So that includes for him Halloween. It includes for him divorce. He will not do that. He will then famously, and this is what gave rise to the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, that the Supreme Court vindicated Jack Phillips's rights by a 7-2 vote. I wish it had been 9-0, but 7-2 is a super majority, and it means the justices of different philosophies and on the ideological spectrum come together and agree that religious liberty is important to our constitutional order.
Oh, it is. So, do you have a website you would like to promote about the book? Any website?
I'm so 20th century. What's a website?
Yeah,
but you can go on anywhere books are sold. Amazon, and I hope that people do buy from the Leviathan, that they'll be kind enough to review the book. But I do want to put in a plug for a Christian bookstore. There's Mardell's bookstore, part of the Hobby Lobby family.
Okay.
There are about 36 or 37 of those stores around the United States.
Oh, wow.
And then there's a wonderful single mom and pop Christian bookstore outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I love that family. I'm not from Pennsylvania, but I love that family. And their bookstore, and you can go online, heartsandmindsbooks.com.
Well, it's good to know about these bookstores because Lifeway closed a lot of their bookstores.
Exactly, yes.
And it was very surprising that happened, because we do need Christian bookstores and have that opportunity for people to get that don't like going online. They need that personal relationship with people. But thanks for letting us know about those. And anything else as far as summing up your book and a couple issues, how would you sum up your book?
Really 2 sentences. The culture is against us, but the Constitution as interpreted by the Supreme Court of the United States is for us. So we need to stand firm, equip ourselves. We need the breastplate and the helmet in a secular world to deal effectively with these kinds of pressures that are on the church and on professionals within the church. So there is a lot of hope to be gleaned and to be seen in what the Supreme Court of the United States does year after year. I need to tell one very quick story.
Okay.
May I?
Sure.
And this is that issue that I mentioned at the outset, the right of Christian institutions, including church schools, to determine who will teach and this was the real case, fire a teacher who was claiming a violation by the Christian school of her federal civil rights act, her rights under a federal civil rights act. The federal civil rights laws are very important. They're precious to us. We need those protections as a free people. But it's the right thing in the wrong place. What the Supreme Court of the United States told the Obama administration's EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, is, I'm sorry, you cannot go into that school and try to regulate what the school does, even if the school is actually violating the civil rights laws. People are stunned by that. That decision was 9-0, including Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Well, that's amazing. Or surprising.
That's the beauty of religious freedom, because it's embodied in our Constitution, those first 16 words of the First Amendment.
I sure appreciate you.
Thank you,
for
Dr.
taking
Harper.
time with me. Once again, with Judge Ken Starr on these so important issues about our religious liberties that are in crisis.